Welcome back to One Hit Wonderland, where we take a look at artists known for only one song. Now, as I have chronicled frequently on this show, the late 90s were a weird time.
I get knocked down!
After the slow fade out of grunge and alternative, the music world started grasping at anything to replace it. We knew we wanted it to be happy and colorful, but other than that, it was everything goes. It was a great time for all sorts of weird micro-genres to have their brief moment in the sun. But beyond those, there were also the songs that were so odd, they didn't have a genre at all.
Well, are you Johnny Ray? Who wants to know? Are you Slim Ray?
Yeah, this was a thing. Sir, would you please confirm your identity for the viewers?
Are you Jimmy Ray? Who wants to know? Who wants to know?
Come on, man. Well, if he's not going to identify himself, I'll have to do it for him. The song is Are You Jimmy Ray? And the singer, despite his caginess, is in fact the titular Jimmy Ray. And I have no clue what his deal is.
Who wants to know? Who wants to know about me?
The answer is no one. No one wanted to know about him. Despite his male model cheekbones and eye-catching ridiculous pompadour, it turns out that most people simply weren't that interested in this guy, whoever he was.
You don't mess around with me, unless you're feeling dangerous.
Are You Jimmy Ray was never really a big hit. It peaked at number 13 on the Hot 100 in early 1998, and only at number 28 on the airplay charts. In the annals of silly 90s crap, it's never really the first song you think of. But you definitely couldn't say it's been lost to time. For anyone who was there, Are You Jimmy Ray has lingered on in the back of their minds, an odd collective half-memory that we're not sure actually happened. Like, does anyone remember that 90s song where the guy's own backup singers kept trying to guess his name, like a weird version of Rumpelstiltskin? Was that real? Did I imagine that?
Are you Johnny Ray?
No, it happened, but only briefly. We never found out enough about Jimmy Ray to give him any context. But that's where I come in, here to clear up all those nagging questions. I mean, we've got to answer who Jimmy Ray even is before we figure out if this guy is him or not. Let's do this.
Reaper, I'm a dreamer, a good God, I'm a believer.
Once upon a time, there was a young British boy named James Edwards, later to be known as Jimmy Ray. And Jimmy Ray had a dream that one day, he would bring 50s rockabilly music to the masses.
You always want to be a singer in a band?
No.
No?
No, I always wanted to kind of work with chimpanzees and stuff.
Seriously?
Yeah.
Okay, well, the script I wrote says he wanted to make 50s music, so we're going with that. It's kind of an odd goal, but it's not without precedent. Every decade since the 50s, someone has tried to bring 50s music back, some of them successfully. Not usually successful for very long, but they did get there. Who knows? Jimmy Ray could easily have been the next Shakin' Stevens. But all those guys were traditionalists, and that was not for Jimmy. He wound up taking a much different path.
Yo, I'll tell you what I want, what I really, really want. So tell me what you want.
In 1997, after a bit of a dormant period for most of the decade, the UK pop scene was blowing up again. The center of it was Simon Fuller, manager of the Spice Girls and future TV mega producer. He looked at Jimmy's beautiful face and mile-high bouffant hair and decided he could make this kid a star. Now, he hooked him up with a producer, Connell Fitzpatrick, not seen here. Fitzpatrick had already had one hit with a girl group called Shampoo.
Uh-oh, we're in trouble. Something's come along and it's burst our bubble.
That hit is a truly insidious earworm that I'm surprised isn't better remembered. It was extremely influential in all the brat pop of the new millennium. In America, it's only known for being on the Power Rangers movie soundtrack. Dance, Ivan Ooze, dance. My point is, with that guy as his producer, whatever Jimmy Ray came out with wasn't going to sound like Carl Perkins. And what they wound up with is a sound they called popabilly hip-hop. The hell does that sound like? Who wants to know? Okay, let me say this first. I actually don't remember Are You Jimmy Ray at all. I was a kid. I was only just starting to become aware of popular music, and this song was not near big enough to get on my radar at the time. And in the years since, I've never heard it on the radio on those all-90s weekends, never saw it play on those VH1 nostalgia shows. My exposure to Jimmy Ray comes from one and only one source, which is everyone I know being all like, "Oh man, remember Are You Jimmy Ray?"
Well.
And when I finally tracked it down for myself, I got it. This is not a song you forget.
Are you Johnny Ray? Who wants to know? Are you Slim Ray? Who wants to know?
And it's not like because it was like super crazy bananas or anything. If it was, it might actually be less memorable. Instead, it's just puzzling. Why is the song like that? Why is that the hook?
Who wants to know? Who wants to know?
Okay, well, here's my attempt to make sense of it. I've talked in the past about a certain strain of pop song that I call the I'm Back Bitch single. It's a big, loud, empty song that has no purpose except to celebrate a superstar's unchallengeable greatness, often referencing the artist's name right in the title. In fact, Simon Fuller's two biggest acts had songs like that. But Are You Jimmy Ray is something much rarer. An I'm Here Bitch single. It still basically only exists as an advertisement for its artists, but rather than celebrating their established greatness, it's proclaiming their future success. It's meant to blast open the doors and introduce themselves to the world, like, hello universe, check me out, you're gonna like me, you're gonna love me. I can only think of like a couple examples of that. They're not very common, because, surprise, it's much easier to pull this off from a position of strength. If some newcomer tries this and fails, they've started their career looking just absolutely ridiculous. For example, this song. Not a flop, but also definitely not big enough to justify this weird newcomer singing a song about his own goddamn name. Now that said, if Jimmy Ray had in fact gone on to bigger, better things, maybe the unmitigated balls of this song would seem entirely justified.
Come and take a walk with me if you're feeling dangerous.
I mean, I get what he's doing. It's kind of like a viral marketing kind of deal. This guy must be important if he's got his own song about himself. Everybody's asking about Jimmy Ray. They are? Yes, they are. Take our word for it. Check out the artist everyone's talking about.
Who wants to know? Who wants to know?
And who wants to know? The producer thought that was just kind of a cool guy way to answer. Saw Robert De Niro say it in a movie once.
You Jack Welch? Who wants to know? That's it.
Okay, so I get all that. What about the rest of it?
Are you Johnny Ray? Who wants to know? Are you Slim Ray? Who wants to know? Are you Fat Ray?
They're not just asking about him. They're trying to figure out his name. They've got the last name. But the first name, that one's stumping them. They keep trying to figure out, they keep throwing the names of other people in there, other musicians,
Are you Johnny Ray? Are you Leg Ray?
celebrities,
Are you Fat Ray?
fish,
Slim Ray?
Slim Ray.
Are you Slim Ray?
I don't even have a clue who that is. The only thing that comes up on Google is a guy who writes rafting safety manuals.
Are you Jimmy Ray?
Like, what are they doing? Are they teasing him? Like I used to do to my little brother where I'd get his name wrong on purpose? It has the form of like a children's game, or like a stoner inside joke that no one else could ever possibly get. It's just so naggingly wrong. In other words, it's catchy and memorable as hell. Exactly what you want in a hook.
Because I'm meaner, I'm leaner, I ain't no in-betweener.
And the verses are all about how cool he is, which Jimmy admitted himself he didn't really feel.
Don't mess around with me, unless you're feeling dangerous.
Yeah, you don't want to mess with this bequiffed string bean pretty boy.
I'm leaner.
He'll tell you himself he doesn't feel particularly dangerous. But it's fun, right? If you're gonna write a song with your name in the title, you gotta sell it. The funny thing about the song is, without researching the guy, I would not at all have realized that Jimmy Ray was a rockabilly dude. Possibly not even after watching the video and seeing his glorious greaser hair and giant belt buckle. Elvis is just not the first guy he brings to mind. I mean, yeah, I guess it does start off with that big old rockabilly, well. And I guess that guitar riff, it's kind of original flavor rock and roll, slowed down and polished a bit, but none of that really comes across to me. That's not what rockabilly sounds like. And he wasn't really part of any movement, so there was like no other guy like him to compare him to. In the late 90s, we brought back ska, lounge, swing, mambo, but nothing like this. He certainly doesn't sound like Chris Isaac or Reverend Horton Heat. I mean, God no. Honestly, the 90s artist he reminds me most of is Fatboy Slim. You know, bright, bouncy beats under a kind of music you wouldn't really expect to have dance beats under it. And in that regard, it's the kind of perfect encapsulation of the genre free-for-all that was the late 90s. Nothing about this should make sense. Arguably, it doesn't make sense, but for a brief moment it made sense enough to stick in the brains of every 90s kid alive. But eventually people stopped asking, "Are you Jimmy Ray?" and started asking, "Hey, whatever happened to Jimmy Ray?" Well, why don't we look into that? Jimmy Ray says that, much like many others, he also didn't really get Are You Jimmy Ray. That was the producer's idea, not his. He went with it mostly because, quite reasonably, he didn't imagine it would be the single. But hey, got his foot in the door. From there, he could release the songs that were more his, that were closer to his own vision. The second single was called Goin' to Vegas. Now see, that evokes a certain image. I get it. That's probably more like the music he intended. Alright, see? Nice Buddy Holly riff and... Okay. No, I still get it. It's not like you're gonna ruin a song about Las Vegas by being gaudy and over the top with it. It sounds more than a little like that A Little Less Conversation remix that got big a few years afterwards. Yeah, you know what? I'm gonna give this song a tentative thumbs up.
Take me right back to the track, Jack.
Tragically, this doesn't seem to have done much for Jimmy Ray. I don't think it even got sent to America, and in the UK, it didn't even crack the top 40. It's not surprising. Are You Jimmy Ray is a goofy song that doesn't really set you up for any kind of future. And even before the album came out, people were predicting that his link to the Spice Girls would tank his cred. And then there was the issue that, people who wanted to buy the single, they'd show up at the record store, but then they just couldn't remember his name. Most of them ended up walking out with a copy of Johnny Ray's Greatest Hits. The third and last single for Jimmy Ray was entitled I Got Rolled. Kidding. No, this was his last single.
I got rolled. The one I love is gone. Well, I got rolled. Yeah, I got rolled.
I mean, it is what it is. I like the jump around squeals in the background. But at this point, you know what you're getting from Jimmy Ray. And this didn't chart anywhere, confirming what everyone knew. There was just no market for a teen idol British hip-hop Elvis. Let's be real, the record company screwed him by making Are You Jimmy Ray the lead single. Jimmy Ray's status as a one-hitter was cemented the second that song took off. And that was pretty much it for him. Simon Fuller cut him from the label, he got some apologies of how they handled his career, and then he was gone, leaving us with just as many unanswered questions as he came in with. No. That was easy. Guess I can get back to my quarantine regimen of beer and video games. I mean, I should probably try and explain a little more, I guess, but Jimmy Ray's post-hit life is just a complete mystery to me. I looked and I just found very little. I found his LinkedIn. I even found a Jimmy Ray fan page that operated right up to the day that GeoCities closed down. But even from those sources, I got very little info about what he's been up to. There was a press release for an online soccer video game he was involved with that doesn't seem to have ever materialized. He was part of a music production group called Air Players, but their MySpace page is long gone. Found a link to some J-pop songs by someone named Jimmy Ray, but I'm gonna guess that's a different guy. Maybe he went back to work with chimps like he always wanted. But I can say that in 2017, for Are You Jimmy Ray's 20-year anniversary, Jimmy Ray did in fact finally resurface with a new album. I've listened to it a little, and it does sound like what I imagine he would have sounded like if he hadn't gone pop. And if you want to know what that sounds like, the lead single is a more authentic sounding rework of his only hit, entitled Who Wants to Know.
I'm a believer. Who wants to know? Who wants to know about me?
If you really want to have fun with it, he should have named the song Weren't You Jimmy Ray? Probably not. But I wouldn't mind living in the universe where he had become a big star.
Well, let's do it again. Are you Johnny Ray?
The late 90s were a glorious time to be alive, and Are You Jimmy Ray is just a perfect confluence of events that couldn't have happened at any other time. He could have probably had a better chance at a longer career if he hadn't tried to be a pop star. He would have at least gotten a chance to release a proper second album. But at the same time, would we really need that? We've got plenty of throwback, traditional artists. We only have one Are You Jimmy Ray. I hope we never find out if he's Jimmy Ray or not. May Are You Jimmy Ray linger on in the back of our brains forever.
Who wants to know?